Balancing a game's difficulty is an art form in itself and can be very challenging for game developers to pull off successfully. Sometimes games have difficulty spikes or poor balancing in general, and you may suddenly struggle in a new area when your characters were doing fine in the previous one. If this happens in Lunar Silver Star Story, find the nearest Goddess Althena statue. These allow you to freely restore your characters to full health just by interacting with them. Go back into the area that your party is struggling with and keep defeating as many enemies there as you can. When your party's HP and MP runs low, return to the goddess statue to restore them. Keep repeating this pattern and your characters will gradually gain levels and grow strong enough to match the more challenging adversaries. What I have just described to you is called grinding for levels and is a common, if somewhat tedious, practice in many RPGs. Even some really well-balanced games can have difficulty spikes at times, and it may be necessary to use a technique like this in order to strengthen your characters before you can make progress again. Another reason you may need to do this sometimes is for the game's currency. You may not have enough to fully equip your characters with everything they need from the newest shop, for example, and so in order to gain more of the game's currency, you'll have to defeat more monsters. In the cases where you are trying to level your characters quickly, you want to make sure you are paying attention to how many experience points they are getting from each battle, and compare that with the length of time and overall difficulty of the battle. Ideally, you can find an area that has fairly easy battles for your characters to complete, but also gives decent amounts of experience points so that they can still level up without spending too much time. The same applies for gathering currency as well. Some enemies naturally provide more or less experience points or currency than others, and so you want to make sure you are choosing enemies that give helpful amounts of currency if you are trying to save up for new equipment or items. Generally speaking, you'll usually have the best experience with this by either visiting the area you are struggling with and repeatedly battling there until your characters get strong enough to handle battles more comfortably, or else going back to the most recent area that you have previously completed successfully and battling a bit more there first, where you know it was easier to deal with, and then attempting to continue on after that. Grinding is all about finding the most efficient way to quickly gain levels or currency for your characters, so that you can progress in the game again. Each game is different, and what the best approach will be depends on the game you are playing and at what point you are struggling. Some games even have especially lucrative enemies that are hidden away in optional areas that give unusually high amounts of gold or experience points. If your game has these and you can reach them, they are a perfect opportunity to do some grinding to gather experience or resources for your characters. If you want to minimize the amount of grinding that you have to do, I have some recommendations. First, never run from battles unless you're in a desperate situation. Your characters only grow stronger by winning battles, and the more you run, the more difficult the game will become over time. Game balancing assumes that players are engaging in almost every battle they can, so if you aren't seeing each battle through to completion, the difficulty is going to outpace your character's progress, and you're going to struggle quickly and more often. Second, keep battling enemies that you meet in each new area until your party can defeat them easily. When you reach a new area in an RPG, it usually comes with new enemies to learn about and defeat. Sometimes they can be noticeably more challenging than the previous enemy types you have faced, and your characters may struggle, especially at the start. But if you keep progressing, you'll learn more about an enemy's weaknesses, what works and what doesn't work against them, and which ones to focus on defeating first. As your characters grow in levels and gain stronger equipment, they will be able to better handle enemies in your current area. When the normal enemy battles in that area start to feel a bit easy to handle, that's usually a good sign that you are safe to continue your progress into the next area of the game. If you try to rush forward too quickly before your characters have gained sufficient strength, and you may run into a difficult boss battle that stops your progress. Or the next area may have even stronger enemies that you might have handled okay had you taken the time to level up a bit in the previous area, but since you skipped doing that, now it's a huge struggle to even defeat normal enemies, and you end up having to go back and level in the previous area anyways. Progress tends to go much smoother if you engage in the battles and allow your characters to progress naturally as you play, rather than having to do a bunch of backtracking. And while, no matter what, there may be some areas in an RPG where you are forced to grind a few levels to proceed, you'll come to learn good spots to do that with time, and you can get a feel for when your characters are strong enough to proceed in any part of the game, just by how tough or easy it is for them to dispatch enemies in a given area. Finally, if you find something unusual in a game, for example, an enemy that gives double the usual amount of experience points or currency, or has a really good item that it drops repeatedly, which you can either sell to a shop for a lot of money, or use to benefit your characters, or maybe it's an easily accessible restoration point to refill your characters to full health in the middle of a dungeon, take advantage of those opportunities. Not all grinding spots are made equal, so you want to make sure you are using the best approach that you have at your disposal at any given point in the game, and sometimes that means taking time to gather experience, currency, or other resources, even when your characters might not be struggling at that time, simply because it's too lucrative an opportunity to pass up. If you found this video helpful, please leave a like so others can find it more easily. And if you haven't watched them yet, here are my other videos in this series where I teach you about the basics of playing RPGs. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.